Why do some women walk into a room and instantly become unforgettable, while others, just as beautiful, just as intelligent, quietly fade into the background? Why does one woman receive genuine effort, commitment, and respect, while another keeps hearing, "I'm just not ready for anything serious"? The answer isn't beauty. It isn't luck. And it definitely isn't about saying the perfect thing. It's something far more subtle. Most people spend years trying to become more attractive. They improve their appearance. They learn conversation starters. They memorize dating advice. They practice confidence in the mirror. But almost nobody pays attention to the one thing that changes how every conversation feels. Not what you say, not even how you say it, but the emotional position you're speaking from. And once you notice it, you'll never be able to unsee it again. Because every interaction begins with an invisible question. Who is asking for approval here? The strange part is that nobody says it out loud, yet everyone feels it. Imagine meeting two women. The first smiles constantly. She laughs at every joke. She agrees with almost everything you say. She carefully watches your reactions before speaking. Every sentence is polished. Every answer is safe. Every compliment feels perfectly timed. At first, she seems pleasant. But after a few minutes, something feels predictable. You know exactly what she's trying to achieve. She's trying to make you like her. Now imagine someone completely different. She smiles, but only when something genuinely amuses her. She disagrees without becoming defensive. She asks questions she actually wants answers to. She isn't trying to win the room. She's simply deciding whether the room deserves her attention. Suddenly, everyone starts paying attention to her. What changed? Not her face, not her clothes, not even her words. Only one thing changed. Her direction. Most people enter conversations asking, "How do I make them choose me?" Magnetic people enter conversations asking, "Do I even enjoy talking to this person?" That tiny shift changes everything, because confidence isn't loud. Confidence isn't dominance. Confidence isn't pretending not to care. Real confidence is much quieter. It's the absence of desperation, and people can feel desperation long before they can explain it. Psychologists have spent decades studying something called emotional contagion, the idea that our emotional states spread automatically to the people around us. Research by Elaine Hatfield and her colleagues showed that emotions don't simply stay inside us. They leak into conversations through facial expressions, posture, timing, tone, and countless signals we never consciously notice. Which means, if you're secretly hoping someone validates you, they often feel that pressure. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your attention isn't free. It's attached to an outcome. Think about the last time someone desperately wanted something from you. Maybe they wanted your approval. Maybe they wanted you to buy something. Maybe they wanted you to say yes. Even if they were perfectly polite, you probably felt it, and it made you pull back. Now ask yourself something uncomfortable. Have you ever walked into a conversation carrying that same invisible pressure? Maybe not intentionally. Maybe you never thought, "I need this person to like me." But perhaps you softened your opinion because disagreement felt risky. Maybe you laughed when nothing was funny. Maybe you answered in ways that sounded impressive instead of honest. Maybe you checked your phone afterward wondering, "Did I say something weird?" We've all done it. The problem isn't insecurity. The problem is giving someone else the job of deciding your value. Because the moment another person's reaction becomes the judge of your worth, your freedom disappears. And freedom is one of the most attractive qualities a human being can possess. Here's something interesting. When people describe someone as magnetic, they rarely mention appearance first. They say things like, "She seemed comfortable. I felt calm around her. It felt like she wasn't trying. I couldn't figure out why I wanted to keep talking." Notice something? They're describing an experience, not a personality. You don't become unforgettable because you perform confidence. You become unforgettable because people stop feeling responsible for your emotional state. That's rare. Very rare. Imagine sitting across from someone who doesn't need you to entertain them, doesn't need you to rescue awkward silence, doesn't need constant reassurance, doesn't panic if there's a pause. Silence appears, and instead of rushing to fill it, she lets it breathe. At first, it almost feels strange. Then something unexpected happens. The other person begins talking more. Why? Because silence isn't always uncomfortable. Neediness makes silence uncomfortable. Security makes silence feel safe. This is one of the biggest differences between attraction and approval. Approval chases. Attraction observes. Approval performs. Attraction reveals. Approval says, "I hope you like me." Attraction quietly asks, "I wonder who you really are." That curiosity changes everything. Because people love talking to those who make them feel interesting, not those who are trying to appear interesting. This is where most advice gets it backwards. We're told to have better stories, better jokes, better lines, better answers. But the strongest communicators often ask the simplest questions, not because they're following a script, because they're genuinely curious. There's a huge difference. Suppose someone asks, "So, what do you do?" Most conversations stop there. But imagine instead hearing, "What part of your work actually excites you these days?" Now something changes. You're no longer asking for information. You're inviting someone to reveal themselves, and people rarely forget those moments. In his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie wrote that becoming genuinely interested in other people creates stronger relationships than trying to make others interested in you. Nearly a century later, that observation still holds up. Because attention is becoming one of the rarest resources in modern life. Everyone is broadcasting. Very few people are receiving. Most conversations are simply two people waiting for their turn to speak. So imagine how refreshing it feels when someone is actually present. Not pretending, not scanning the room, not mentally preparing their next sentence. Just listening. Really listening. And here's the paradox. The women who leave the strongest impression are rarely thinking, "How do I impress him?" They're thinking, "What can I learn about this person?" That doesn't make them passive. It makes them powerful. Because curiosity is impossible to fake for very long. People eventually sense the difference. One conversation feels like an interview. The other feels like discovery. Guess which one people remember? Here's a small experiment. The next time someone asks how you're doing, don't answer immediately. Instead, after you respond, ask, "No, really, how are you doing?" Then stay silent. Don't interrupt, don't rescue them, just wait. You might be surprised by what happens next. Because underneath the automatic, "I'm good," many people are carrying things they've never said out loud. Sometimes the greatest gift you can offer isn't advice. It's permission. Permission for someone to feel seen. And here's what makes this so powerful. When people consistently feel understood around you, they begin associating you with emotional safety. Not excitement, not entertainment, safety. That sounds ordinary. Until you realize how incredibly rare it has become. In a world full of people trying to be noticed, the person who notices others stands out the most. But don't confuse this with becoming everyone's therapist. Healthy curiosity doesn't mean carrying everyone's emotional weight. It simply means being fully present while you're there. Then knowing when to let go. Because women who become unforgettable don't sacrifice themselves to keep people comfortable. They simply make people feel respected. There's a difference. One drains you. The other strengthens every relationship you build. So if the first key is letting go of the need to be chosen, the second is making people feel genuinely seen. Master those two alone, and conversations begin changing in ways that feel almost impossible to explain. People open up faster. Trust grows naturally. You stop chasing connection. Connection starts finding you. But here's where most people make a mistake. They believe that confidence and empathy are enough. They're not, because there's another invisible signal people notice within minutes. It quietly answers one question. Does this person actually know who they are? And if the answer is unclear, everything you've built can begin to fade. That's exactly where we're going next. Have you ever met someone who made you feel calm the moment they started talking? Not loud, not flashy, not trying to dominate the room, yet everyone listened when they spoke. Here's the surprising part. It wasn't confidence alone that created that effect. It was certainty. And certainty is one of the rarest things people encounter today. Most conversations are filled with hidden hesitation. I think, maybe, I don't know, I guess. There's nothing wrong with these phrases until they become your default language, because every unnecessary apology, every sentence you soften, every opinion you immediately explain away quietly tells people, I'm not completely convinced by my own thoughts. People don't consciously notice this. They simply feel it. And feelings shape perception much faster than logic ever can. Think about the people you've respected most in your life. Maybe it was a mentor, a business owner, a teacher, a friend everyone naturally turned to. Were they always right? Of course not, but they knew where they stood. That certainty created stability, and stability creates trust. Because in an uncertain world, people naturally lean toward those who seem internally grounded. The mistake many women make is confusing kindness with flexibility. They believe being easygoing means agreeing with everyone, avoiding conflict, never disappointing anyone, never saying no. But over time, something strange happens. The more available you become, the less valuable your presence begins to feel. Not because people are cruel, because human psychology assigns value to things with clear boundaries. Imagine walking into two different stores. The first says everything is on sale. The second carefully selects what belongs on its shelves. Which one feels more valuable before you've even looked at the products? People work the same way. Standards create perceived value. Not arrogance, not superiority, standards. One of the most respected researchers in psychology, Dr. Brené Brown, spent years studying vulnerability, courage, and belonging. One idea appears again and again throughout her work. Clear boundaries are not the opposite of connection. They make genuine connection possible. Think about that. The people who make you feel safest usually aren't the ones who say yes to everything. They're the ones whose yes actually means something, because they also know how to say no, without guilt, without anger, without needing everyone to approve. That's emotional consistency, and it's incredibly attractive. Here's a simple example. Someone cancels plans with you for the third time. One response sounds like this. It's totally fine. Don't worry about it. Even though you're disappointed, another response sounds different. I understand things come up, but I value reliability. Let's plan something when we're both sure we can make it. Same situation, completely different energy. The second woman isn't punishing anyone. She isn't playing games. She's simply communicating reality. People respect clarity far more than hidden resentment, because resentment is expensive. Clarity is efficient. Now, here's where this becomes even more interesting. Your standards don't become visible when life is easy. They become visible when you're uncomfortable. Anyone can appear confident when receiving compliments. Who are you when someone disagrees with you? When someone misunderstands you? When someone doesn't text back? When someone chooses someone else? Those moments reveal whether your confidence is real or rented. Many people borrow confidence from circumstances. A successful date, a promotion, attention, validation, everything feels wonderful until those things disappear. Then confidence disappears too. Real confidence works differently. It survives disappointment because it wasn't built on applause, it was built on identity. Ask yourself a difficult question. If nobody praised you this week, would you still respect yourself? If nobody noticed your effort, would you still keep your standards? If someone walked away, would your opinion of yourself change? Those answers determine far more than dating. They shape every relationship you'll ever have. Now, let's talk about communication itself, because there's another habit quietly reducing people's impact: overcomplication. Some believe intelligence sounds complicated. In reality, the clearest thinkers often use the simplest language. Imagine asking someone a question. One person answers for 3 minutes. They circle around the point, they repeat themselves. By the end, you've forgotten the original question. Another person speaks for 20 seconds. Every sentence moves forward. Every word has a purpose. Which person feels more confident? Usually the second, because clarity reflects organized thinking. This idea has been explored by Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman in Thinking, Fast and Slow. Our brains naturally prefer information that's easier to process. When ideas feel clear, they often feel more trustworthy as well. Notice something important. That doesn't mean speaking faster, or louder, or using bigger words. It means removing unnecessary words. Imagine your sentences wearing a heavy backpack. Every filler phrase, every extra explanation, every apology adds another stone. Eventually, your message arrives exhausted. Strong communicators travel light. Instead of saying, "I'm sorry, this might sound kind of weird and maybe I'm wrong," They simply say, "I see it differently." Instead of, "I don't know if this makes sense," they say, "Here's what I've noticed." Tiny changes, massive difference. The goal isn't sounding powerful, it's sounding honest. There's another habit that instantly elevates someone's presence: owning your opinions without forcing them onto others. Notice the difference. "I believe," instead of "everyone knows," or "you're wrong." Emotionally mature people don't need agreement to feel secure. That's why disagreements with them rarely become arguments. They're not fighting for identity, they're exchanging perspectives. And that's incredibly refreshing, especially today, when so many conversations feel like competitions. The strongest communicators don't enter a room trying to win. They enter trying to understand. Then they speak with enough clarity that understanding becomes possible. Ironically, that often gives them far more influence than those desperately trying to persuade everyone. Here's another quiet habit worth noticing. Pay attention to how quickly you explain yourself. Someone questions a decision, do you instantly begin defending it? Or can you simply say, "It was the right decision for me," and stop there? Silence after certainty is powerful because it signals something important. I don't require universal approval. People rarely argue with those who aren't arguing with themselves. Everything we've discussed so far points toward one invisible truth. People trust consistency. Consistency between your words, your actions, your boundaries, your emotions. When those pieces align, you become predictable in the best possible way. People relax around you. They stop wondering which version of you they'll meet today. That reliability becomes magnetic. But here's the final twist. Even women with clear standards, strong boundaries, excellent communication, and real confidence sometimes still feel overlooked. Why? Because one final quality quietly amplifies every single thing we've talked about. Without it, confidence can feel cold, boundaries can feel distant, clarity can feel intimidating. With it, everything becomes warm, inviting, irresistible. And unlike confidence, it can't be faked for very long. That's the final key. And once you understand it, you'll realize why some women never have to chase attention. Because people naturally want to step into the life they're already enjoying. What if the quality that makes someone unforgettable has nothing to do with confidence? What if it's not beauty, not intelligence, not status, but something so simple that most people overlook it every single day? Here's the clue. Think about the people you genuinely enjoy being around. Not the loudest, not the funniest, not the richest. The people whose company somehow leaves you feeling lighter.
What do they all have in common?
They're fully there. When they laugh, they really laugh. When they listen, you can feel it. When they drink their coffee, they actually taste it. When they ask how your week has been, you don't get the feeling they're already thinking about their next sentence. They're present. And presence is becoming one of the rarest qualities in the modern world. Because almost everyone is somewhere else. Physically, they're sitting across from you. Mentally, they're checking notifications, planning tomorrow, replaying yesterday, wondering how they look, thinking about what they should say next. They're everywhere, except where life is actually happening. That's why genuine presence feels almost magnetic. It has become unusual. Imagine meeting two women. The first spends the entire dinner glancing at her phone whenever it lights up. She smiles, she responds, she says all the right things, but somehow the conversation never feels deep. Now imagine another woman. Her phone stays out of sight. When you speak, she looks directly at you. Not intensely, not awkwardly, just attentively. She notices your expressions. She catches details you didn't realize you revealed. Hours later, you leave wondering, why did that conversation feel so different? The answer isn't mystery. It's attention. Attention is one of the highest forms of respect, and people instinctively move toward those who make them feel respected. Here's something fascinating. Researchers studying happiness have repeatedly found that our enjoyment of an experience depends less on the event itself than on how present we are during it. In the happiness hypothesis, psychologist Jonathan Haidt discusses how the mind constantly wanders, often stealing joy from ordinary moments. Think about that. Most people aren't missing better lives. They're missing the life already happening in front of them. Now, here's where this connects to attraction. Many people unknowingly communicate one silent message. I'm waiting for something better. Better circumstances, better timing, better relationships, more money, a different version of themselves. Everything meaningful is postponed. I'll relax after. I'll be happy when. I'll finally enjoy life once. But the women who leave lasting impressions don't radiate waiting. They radiate participation. They participate in life today. They enjoy today's walk, today's conversation, today's music, today's meal, today's sunshine. That energy changes how people experience them. Because joy is contagious. Not forced positivity, not pretending everything is perfect. Real enjoyment. The kind that's quiet, stable, almost impossible to manufacture. You can usually tell within minutes whether someone's smile comes from performance or peace. And people trust peace. Have you ever noticed that some individuals seem interesting even when they're doing absolutely nothing extraordinary? They're reading on a park bench, watching the rain, cooking dinner, walking through the city. Nothing dramatic is happening, yet there's something captivating about them. Why? Because they're fully engaged with the moment. They're not constantly broadcasting. They're experiencing. Ironically, that makes others curious. Curiosity grows where performance disappears. This is the hidden difference between attention-seeking and genuine presence. Attention-seeking asks, "Did everyone notice me?" Presence quietly says, "I noticed this moment." One chases witnesses. The other collects experiences. Guess which life looks richer from the outside? Exactly. Now, let's clear up a common misunderstanding. Enjoying your life does not mean every day feels amazing. It doesn't mean you're always smiling. It doesn't mean ignoring pain. Real emotional abundance isn't the absence of struggle. It's refusing to let struggle become your entire identity. Some of the strongest women you'll ever meet have gone through heartbreak, failure, loss, disappointment, rejection. Yet, when you spend time with them, those experiences don't dominate every conversation. They've learned something powerful. Pain can visit. It doesn't have to move in permanently. Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl wrote in Man's Search for Meaning that even in the most difficult circumstances, people retain the freedom to choose their attitude toward what they face. That idea doesn't eliminate suffering. It changes your relationship with it. And that relationship becomes visible. Not through speeches, through daily behavior, through the way someone greets a waiter, enjoys a walk, listens to a friend, smiles at a stranger, responds to inconvenience. These tiny moments quietly reveal someone's emotional world. Now, let's connect everything we've discovered. The first key was releasing the need to be chosen, because people feel freedom. The second was making others genuinely feel seen, because people remember how you make them feel. The third was developing clear standards and communicating them with calm certainty, because consistency creates trust. The fourth was learning to express yourself with clarity instead of performance, because simple honesty carries more weight than polished perfection. And now we arrive at the fifth, learning to enjoy your own life. Not for social media, not to make someone jealous, not to prove anything, simply because this moment deserves to be lived. When these 5 qualities come together, something subtle begins to happen. You stop measuring every interaction by whether someone liked you. Instead, you begin asking better questions. Did I enjoy that conversation? Did this person respect my values? Did I feel like myself? Did we bring out something good in each other? Notice the difference? Your attention shifts. And wherever attention goes, energy follows. Suddenly, you're no longer chasing chemistry. You're evaluating compatibility. You're no longer trying to become unforgettable. You're simply becoming more authentic. Ironically, that's exactly what makes people remember you. Because here's the truth. Almost nobody tells you. People aren't drawn to women who appear perfect. They're drawn to women who appear complete. There's an enormous difference. Perfection creates distance. Completeness creates curiosity. Perfection feels fragile. Completeness feels peaceful. Perfection says, "Please don't find my flaws." Completeness says, "I know I have flaws. They don't frighten me." That quiet confidence cannot be copied with better clothes, better makeup, better conversation techniques, or carefully rehearsed texts. It comes from building a relationship with yourself that no one else's opinion can fully control. And that's why the title of this video isn't really about dating, or attraction, or becoming more desirable. Those are only side effects. The real transformation happens much earlier. The moment you stop seeing yourself as someone waiting to be selected and begin living as someone who has already chosen herself. Ironically, that's the moment other people begin seeing you differently too. Not because you manipulated them, not because you learned psychological tricks, but because your presence tells a completely different story. A story that says, I already have a meaningful life. If you become part of it, wonderful. If not, I'll continue building it anyway. That is the difference between being an option and becoming a rarity. Because true luxury has never begged to be noticed. It simply carries a value that speaks for itself.